Alex Ansary here, just off the Greyhound bus. It's been an 80-hour trip, and I'm visiting my friend Dede, and it's good to be in your new home here in Northeast Portland. How are things?
Oh, good. Yeah, I got real lucky with this place considering the housing industry here. Got this place through a friend who has a 92-year-old uncle that owns this place. Built this little rectangle box here as a prefab in this area near the airport, and they built a lot of these, but this is a great little neighborhood, and because I was a member of the extended family, I was lucky to get this place because housing for most people, especially if you come to this town and don't have resources, you can't find a place to live that you can afford. People coming up from California think the rents are cheap here, but even the housing market, you can't buy a house. You can't buy a decent house for $250,000. You have to go up to Vancouver to get the lower rents in Washington. And so the weirdest thing about the housing is that all the people that have come here have cars, so our traffic is hideous. It's like nothing I've ever seen. It's stunning. I've lived here for 50 years. And the traffic is just, it's brutal. I mean, people that are used to that high traffic area think that it's mild, but those of us that live here, there is an upside to all of this, is that more people have been able to come here and affordably go to school. The culture continues to be very booming. There's a lot more cafes, a lot more clubs. The music scene's picked back up. There's it's an interesting phenomena given that the housing thing on streets like Belmont and these areas that have these old houses they make cafes out of, now they're all building these brick and mortar, steel-like modern-looking buildings on top of everything that has a roof. And you drive some of these streets, which you'll see as you stay here. And so gentrification is part of, that's either an upside or a downside, depending on how you're looking at it. But there's an attitude among the people that are from Portland or that love Portland for what it is that's still the same really good heart-centered energy. And then you have alongside that, this is a microcosm, of course, of the greater. You see people that really have an attitude of really carelessness. They don't really come here for the environment. They come here because it's cheaper to live. It's off the earthquake, it's supposedly off the California coast.
I would like to talk more about that because I believe that there are others that do come for the environment.
Many. But
it's not necessarily a positive thing. It's I want to come and suck off of the energy that is there. I'm not really interested in giving back or being friendly with the people that were already there before me.
That's the downside.
You have to look at this as a beautiful area, but it attracts all kinds.
Well, that's the downside of gentrification in any area, is that people, But at the same time, I really hold to that you got to hold that Rose City feeling of the heart chakra. This is Portland, I think, is the heart chakra of the West Coast. You got to hold that and keep creating arts, communities, music, culture. And we have a lot more help now for the homeless than there ever was before because the need has increased. But at the same time, you see people sleeping on Burnside downtown in their sleeping bags, and they don't make them go away anymore because there's nowhere to put them. And when it was really cold, I was really kind of impressed how many people opened warming centers in churches, basements of big buildings that they haven't ever done before.
Right.
And people are contributing more to the food banks. People that are here thinking it's going to be warm here are having to leave because it's a forgiving winter, but it's still cold here in the winter months. So we had temperatures down as far as 10, which we never see here, as you know from living here.
And when was it 10? How long ago was that?
Well, we had an unexpected 20-year record-breaking freeze before Christmas, the beginning of December. And then just, I think about 3 weeks ago, I woke up to icicles again. It was 32 degrees on a Sunday and 60 the next day. Really weird swoops in the weather.
Right.
But right around the first of the year into January, we had some really brutal weather. I got snowed in here for 5 days. The whole bank of windows there were covered with ice.
How about, wow.
Couldn't see out for 3 days. So.
And it's very icy here in the Pacific Northwest. Growing up here, also I grew up in Aurora, for those that don't know, which is south of Portland. Moved here when I was 13, but always was familiar with Portland. And Portland was somewhat magical in the 1980s. The streets of Southeast, before the rents went really up, it was great to be able to stay in some of those places.
Oh, right.
And I remember my dad had a very cheap apartment on 22nd and Clinton. Oh. But I'm curious about the rainfall. How's that been? Because everywhere I've been, it's been a drought.
Well, no, we've had a lot of rain here. Of course, we're a rain area, rainforest area, but. Yeah, I put out a 5-gallon bucket and filled it up in 15 minutes off my drain off the roof. And then I filled up another 5-gallon container within just a little while out there.
Okay.
And I've been saving the rainwater, and I'm watering my houseplants and things with it because it's so abundant and it seems to be pretty clean. I'm kind of amazed. Evergreen Airlines in McMinnville is closing down, so the chemtrailing has really ceased.
For those that have never heard of this place, what is it?
Well, Evergreen Airlines is about an hour, maybe a little over an hour from here, southwest. McMinnville area, where the Bruce.
I've never physically seen it, but you've mentioned this place before, and
yeah, it's a big field, and they chemtrail. They'll go from there, come up, and then land at the Air Force Base over here on the other side of the airport.
Which is on the other side of the airport?
Yeah.
On the Oregon side?
Yeah, on the Oregon side.
Okay.
Or is it in the Washington
side? Like the National Guard area?
Yeah, that over there. They may go as far as Centralia.
Has there been increased activity in terms of drones, anything else that is out of the ordinary compared to when I was here?
Living here near the airport, I don't really hear the jets. I mean, I can see the river from up on the hill from here. I can see Mount Hood, Mount Adams from the end of the road. There's a big open area down Alberta that goes to a new dog park they built. And you can see everything, an open sky. That's one of the things I like about it. I'm on the edge of the city. Mm-hmm. I can see Washington State. But the only thing I've really noticed is a lot more fighter jet drills. They're the loud planes that don't go this, back and forth and land in the airport.
I heard there was an unannounced one in Colorado Springs recently. Was there recent activity here?
Yeah, 2 or 3 different, I'd say about 3 times this winter I've heard drills with the fighter jets because they are so loud coming from here. I can hear them really well, and that's why they wake you up at night. They do it at night, after dark, and sometimes not real late in the evening or early morning, but yeah, I've definitely noticed that. Haven't seen any drones. I wonder about them hiding in the strange cloud configurations we've had. I've done quite a bit of research on that. But for me, I'm trying to, like even the chemtrails, I'm trying to keep my focus on them down to them being eliminated. I'm not focusing on how angry it makes me feel when I see them, but I'm looking at them like they don't have the power that they had over me before, and I think that's a very important.
That's position. Where we're going next.
Yeah, that's where we have to go.
We have an issue with Fukushima right now, and there have been some people that have been upset with me emotionally because they perceive me as someone that wasn't upset enough about Fukushima leading to potentially the end of the world as we know it. You're advocating a different perspective. We don't necessarily have to perceive that this is going to end all life. So being a realist, which you are, but also someone that believes in the power of thought, what do you think is the real information about Fukushima? Where the real lies? What's your information? And then from there, how should we mindfully respond to that? Because it sounds like there still is a cover-up to what's happening, but some people may also be overreacting.
That's a really hard call because I know the cover-up would be partly based on the fact that we've got so much nuclear activity in our country here and new nuclear activity coming up that I think Fukushima, as far as a cover-up, is partly a distraction, against what we already have here on the mainland. It's to get our attention off.
So hysteria could distract from the hardcore issues that are already at play. And those deal with why are we continuing to build these facilities?
Right, exactly.
Especially with the threat of the king of all solar flares.
Yes, that's exactly, I think, if there was a cover-up. However, Loren Moray, who was the nuclear consultant for Fukushima that told them originally to take those nuclear rods off the ceiling so that they wouldn't get shook loose, which they didn't do. An extinction-like event is something, given the climate of spiritual ascension and energies that are coming up. Yes, we create reality with our feelings mostly, and then it turns to a thought and then our words. And when you repeat something over and over on a timeline that's already existing, like the timeline of the nuclear materials being on the West Coast, being in the milk in California, they're saying people are already dying from it. I haven't seen that. That's speculation.
I've heard about fertility rate, a decrease in the fertility rate in the Pacific Northwest immediately after Fukushima.
Yeah, and there's an increase in bronchial conditions, cancer in children, which could be caused from any number of things, including chemtrails. So I'm not so sure. I have friends in Hawaii, very highly evolved people, and I called them. I was concerned about them, and they said, "Oh, we eat that radiation for breakfast." And what their thought on it, which is on one end of the spectrum, is that they are able, through being creator gods, to not polarize over the fact that there's radiation coming at them from a close distance, and probably more if things continue to deteriorate over there. But at the same time, another friend went to Tokyo recently and didn't see any indication at all of radiation activity. No, getting people out of the city, no people wearing masks. And that could be a ridiculous outcome of people's behavior, not responding properly to something dangerous in their environment. Alfred Weber, who you know as well, his friends deep in time travel and government said there's 158 trackable timelines occurring all at once. So for me, even though I'm aware of all these issues more than the average person, I also create my timeline that says we aren't going to have an extinction-like event on the planet. And people say, oh, it'll be 80 years or more before your vision of reality. But I don't think so, because time is sped up, and time is art. It's just the art of living and being alive. So if we're creator gods and we can create with our words, thoughts, and feelings, then instead of holding the feeling of apprehension and anxiety and fear, I try to hold the feeling of what it's like to be where I want to be when I get there. So, just because I'm aware of FEMA and FEMA bus activity doesn't mean that I'm going to see myself doing that, or the people that are the nearest and dearest to me. You've got to protect yourself, and not just in your thoughts, but in your feelings, because we can have covert feelings that are based on fear that we don't even know where they're coming from, because there's so many influences in our environment, especially in the city. But I see people growing more gardens, doing more like they did in Geneva, Switzerland. All the neighborhoods get together and have meetings to see who can grow what. And I have to laugh, my brother sent me an email and I sent him that document about the neighborhood gardens being even more prevalent than they are here. And he says, well, I'll grow the pizza, who's going to grow the beer, right? And so, but that's just sort of a reality, and another thing about these things that are occurring, that the powers that were are perpetuating and making us believe that they are still all powerful, is that the more we feed into the fear of what they're producing, the more power they do have. So that's another good reason for keeping yourself, clean. Really feel like what you feel like. At the same time, I do think it counts what you eat and what you drink. But God, thank God, by the grace of God, Oregon had the cojones to go against the lobbyists and vote the fluoride issue out of here, except for in Ashland, which is a very hip community. Their water's fluoridated.
Because at one point they announced that's right. There's also victory stories of towns in Indiana, other places in the U.S. where they're saying no to fluoride, which totally. A lot of people don't know is manufactured in China. They can find some reports. That's why some towns kicked it out. It's made in China. Are you serious?
Well, it's a byproduct of the fertilizer industry, and it's so expensive to try to dissipate that and contain it or to throw it away. So they go into these municipalities that have hard up for cash for their city, and then they sell the idea to the local governments, and the local governments, which I think is insidious and evil, put the fluoride in the water, thinking in their own mind they're doing something good. But if you look at someone's teeth, that comes from a fluoridated city, it doesn't improve your health at all. And thankfully, people were smart enough. They voted down 60-40 here, which is a pretty close call. But that's another thing about Portland that's drawing people, is that we have medical marijuana, we have non-fluoridated water, we have an ability to clear our air because we're near the water and the oceans. There's more trees in this state than anywhere in the U.S. We have more incredibly big health food stores than anywhere in the United States. I'm pretty convinced of that are close in.
So where would you? So many questions I have for you. Where would you rate the food costs? Are they about the same as they were a few years ago, or is this more of an ebb and a flow and an up and down, not necessarily a polarized straight up or
Yeah, it's interesting because it's the same of gasoline prices. Of course,
we've seen up and down. It's no longer $4 a gallon.
No, it's been here as much as $3.13, and right now the average is probably $3.40.
Right.
But the food, definitely a 30% increase across the board.
I noticed more with meat products when I traveled in Texas. In Colorado, the meat was cheaper.
Yeah, and I'm not so good at determining the price of the ordinary food because I usually buy 95% organic.
And talk about, because we've talked about stored foods before. I mean, some of the things, the basic things that you choose to eat, because you're not exactly high income, neither am I, but you still use your imagination to eat very well instead of going out and just eating whatever's at Safeway.
Right, I don't spend my money. I would never shop at Safeway, and now they're merging with Albertsons. And that's a recent thing. So I don't know if Albertsons is going to have a better influence. I don't buy food at Albertsons, produce and stuff, because it's too expensive. It's really lovely food. I mean, they have a great produce market, but I look at the code and I know my barcodes, so I don't buy a two.
But a lot of people think you can't eat organic because it's too expensive, but you cook and you buy in bulk. So what are some of the base items, food items that you eat?
Well, I eat mostly vegetables and turkey and fish and some grain. I'm a gluten-free person, so I eat
quinoa.
I eat quinoa because it's so high in protein and easy to cook, takes moments. I roast every nut I eat. I roast my grains because you get more nutrition that way, and you lose the which would be the negative side of carbohydrates. I drink kombucha. I make my own kombucha.
That's right.
It stimulates the liver But I have a very simple, I'm here by myself, so I have a very simple diet. I can afford to spend food and eat the way I want for the most part because I don't have a car payment and a big house payment. I don't have fancy, things to support, and so it's a little better for me. I don't have health insurance, and nor will I participate in the Obamacare. I have a chiropractor and I have a naturopath, and I go to the NCNM medical clinic here, and you get the best care there for $30 a visit. You can get anywhere.
Obamacare, do you have an opinion on where this is really going to go? They've announced that there's going to be fines, and interestingly enough, as it leads to 2016, they get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
And there's a lot of people going, what are they trying to create emotionally in the body of the average American? Are they trying to create civil unrest? What's the plan there?
I think what they're doing, which is what they always do, is trying to give people a sense that they have to hustle to belong and to be acting right. We come into this planet being a certain entity, large people, and then we're told how to act, speak. Everything about what we do is dictated to us by our parents, and that doesn't mean that's a negative thing. It keeps you alive when you have people watching out for you. But it's the same with Obamacare. My girlfriend, she called me up crying. She said, I can't buy this product I was going to do for my arthritis, this health product, because now I have to spend it on Obamacare or the fine. I said, no, you don't. Why do you have to do that just because some talking head is telling you you're going to get in trouble if you don't? If people don't participate and they don't play, and I think I have some friends that have the Obamacare and they got really good deals for as a couple people for their couple. $30-some a month covers all their health costs. You can't beat that. But they did it because they chose it. They did it to take advantage of what was there for them to take care of themselves. I have other friends that wouldn't get a driver's license if you paid them, and their lives are constantly in hassle, because they don't choose that level of freedom. Well, if you're not aware of the larger picture of what's going on, you don't really have a choice. But once you are aware of Obamacare and the whole thing, government has no business providing health care or demanding that people get it. But at the same time, people's thinking is more important than what you put in your mouth. Because I've seen people that drink and smoke and eat terrible food, and they never fail a health test.
That's true.
Because they have a very positive attitude about life. They're forward
Mind
thinking.
over matter.
Well, we're creator gods. You know, we're here to make something better of what's been given us. But the mundanity of the third dimension is so disempowering that you have to look above it. As even the powers that were, I don't call them the powers that be because their time is over on my timeline.
Okay, and things are just playing out.
Yeah, well, they all have a timeline where they will accomplish everything that they set out to do. But that timeline won't include any influences from the higher level of spirituality or higher humanity's native thing. I think humanity really is heart-centered and kind and generous. Really, I think that's the nature of it.
Then let me ask you this. Do you see a split in consciousness with humanity, with some people going down the road you're talking about, and others saying, you know what, Dede, I'm good with that. We're going to keep scavenging over here.
Right.
Because we can still see the scavengers.
I really think it's a matter of what you're called in your evolutionary path.
That makes sense.
In this particular lifetime, you know I came here to expand consciousness and to take the high road and to work with higher level intelligence people. And there's people that are here that will never in this whole lifetime be aware of the controllers, the people that control the money. They control the weather now, because it used to be whoever controls the money is in control. Now it's whoever controls the weather, because the crops. That's why food costs have gone up. That's why we have these events, you know, these tornadoes and these hurricanes and these tsunamis and stuff. I'm not saying they don't happen in nature, but you know, you do your homework and you see they're contrived events, they're planned events. And normally the sun giving off having a solar sunspot that's huge, earth directed, has a solar flare, throws off coronal mass ejection, the earth puts up her shields. Yes, it shifts the weather, yes, it shifts the tides, and it shifts human behavior. But because of all the chemtrailing, the shield isn't being able to go up as easily. It's been polluted or contaminated by the chemtrailing in the atmosphere, the change of the temperature and stuff. So that's more dangerous than the actual flares themselves.
That's right. One thing we'll maybe kind of play around with this idea that I've thought more about the last couple of years, that instead of looking at the King of all solar flares as a threat, maybe there is a place for this King of all solar flares to reset human society.
Well,
that's something
true.
I strongly suspect, and I think the government potentially may know this is coming, the dark forces, whatever, that a day is coming where their power will be removed from them. Tower of Babel comes to mind. So when people look at underground bunkers and what they're doing, they may really be preparing for something that they're afraid they're going to lose.
Well, yeah, and see, their whole thing isn't necessarily about power and control, it's about sustainability. So they think if they go underground in these massive places that they will be able to sustain. But it's not necessarily going to work that way. All that could crumble while they're in there. But I think that I call the planet or the timeline where they keep their control and they play it out without any spiritual. I call that Planet B. Okay. Planet A would be totally like in the movie Thrive, where the powers fall away and we just have the spiritual. But right now we're in Planet AB, and up until recently, Planet B was in control, but now it's equal. So those negative forces, they can't. That just because they're there doesn't necessarily mean they have the upper hand anymore. They don't. It's equalized. So it's really up to people. You know, like I was saying earlier, there are people that are called to be here that will never, ever know the things you and I know. It's not their calling to know these things. And I have stopped a long time ago trying to convince them, because that isn't their destiny. That isn't why they're here. That's not what they're here to learn. And if you just picked friends that were as aware as you and I are and the people we work with, like for me and the American Underground Network, that is very solution oriented. We're only thinking solution. We don't focus on what's wrong. But if you only had friends that knew all the same things you did, you wouldn't have any friends, and I wouldn't either. Half my relatives wouldn't be able to even talk to me. I wouldn't be able to have relationships with friends I've had for 40 years that we raised our kids together, because this is my calling. And it's not their calling, but they're still beautiful, heart-centered people that love me and support me in my life. And I would never give that up just because the powers that were are scary. I used to require them to listen and to try to participate, and that was a wrong approach, because I'm kind of glad in a way that they don't.
You say I'm sorry to cut you off. You say we're creator gods. It seems like that gets in the way of creating when we're distracted in areas where we really shouldn't be.
Well,
and that's trying to
being a creator God person is not saying that there aren't higher powers or trying to diffuse anyone's views of religion or spirituality. Certainly not. Everybody has a right to do. If we all have different fingerprints, how would we be expected to all have the same thought process or reasoning process? It's absolutely impossible to demand that of another person on the planet. And yet, because of the stream of higher consciousness and the ability to actually be on an equal plane with the dark side and raising above it, people are naturally starting to feel and think. We don't have to convince them. We don't have to pound it into them. We don't have to show them all the DVDs unless they want to see them.
Right.
But really, just by the nature of our timeline and our evolution, people are waking up more every day, and they're going. I think that's why people are drawn to Portland, because they feel this energy here that actually feeds. They may not be able to define it, but all of a sudden I'll talk to someone that 3 months ago would never have considered getting a chiropractor adjustment, or maybe doing something they've always wanted to do, but they couldn't because they didn't have the money. And all of a sudden they're going, well, I want this freedom. So people are starting on their own to choose freedom over security, because they're realizing that security doesn't make them feel that good, because it's as much of an illusion as anything else. And it is just a virtual reality game, really, where science knows that our thinking creates matter. So once people get even an inkling of that, they get a crack of the fact that they can choose how they feel. And if you're feeling terrible all the time, it's because you're not having the right thoughts about your life here, but if you just turn it on its head and start swimming forward instead of backward.
Right.
Because if we're feeling terrible, usually we're swimming backwards, trying to hold in place something that someone told us.
What was before in the last cycle.
Yeah, and it's breaking loose on its own.
Right.
All we have to do is kind of, even just smiling at someone can change their day.
Maintaining humanity.
Yeah, you just feed the best, the highest and the best in people, whether it's a small gesture or a large gesture. And I noticed people that never before have volunteered for anything saying, I think I'm going to volunteer and help the kids. And how that changes the world when you just get outside of your own box and get out and just participate in someone else's well-being. It enhances your well-being. And I see that happening. I see a lot of people changing without really even knowing that they're doing it. And not everybody can live in the country. We were interviewing a gentleman, a musician up in Vancouver, BC a few weeks ago, and I have a lot of respect for him. His name's Ralph Buckley, and he's very talented, and he said, oh, but we need to move out of the country. And I said, Ralph, out of the cities. And I said, Ralph, not everybody has the resources or the finances to do that. They don't know anybody outside of town, maybe. And I said, that's not the important issue for people to feel like they have to get away. The important issue is to turn the cities into gardens like we are doing here. And I think that's why people come here and they can grow spiritually, because there is a lot of influence in that way.
I totally agree with what you just said. I have also believed the opposite of what you just said, more in alignment with your friend. I now believe that we are meant to experience multiple times in one life, that it's not altruistic, point A to point B. There's a time to do this, and there's a time to do this.
Yeah.
There's a time to go up on the mountain and go up to higher elevation. There's a time to bring down that knowledge from the mountain and share it with everybody else.
Right, and I've done that in my own life.
And that's, I think, what life is.
Yeah.
Not being stagnant, just flowing with it.
And so many people, they don't, from birth to death, they don't leave the city. I lived in the rainforest in Vernonia when my daughter was 3. She's 43 now. Mm-hmm. So, and then I just lived in a yurt for a year, and my friends were like, how could you, before I moved here?
You were up on the mountain southwest.
I was in Skyline Boulevard on a 10-acre farm next to another 10-acre farm. I made some friends up there. And yes, it was hard. It was too much work for me with the wood and everything, but I needed it so desperately at that point in my life. I needed the solitary, although I was always coming into town for work and things. I needed the solitary. I needed to hear the owls. I needed to hear the rain.
Do you think it had to do with being higher up and closer to the trees?
I think it had more to do with getting out of the concrete vibration. I needed to be able to hear the rain, which you can in a yurt in spades. I needed to have fresher air for a while, but mostly I just needed some solitude. when I could get it. When I was there by myself, I was just like a food. I needed that. But I don't want to live like we did when we were younger, cut off from everything way out in the forest. That's not
extreme.
Yeah, because it's an extreme, and you need community. The ideal would be to have best of both worlds. People say, well, how did this world get to be such a mess? Well, it's because you didn't pay attention and because you believed what they taught you in school. And now you can see it. Well, my sister's one of those examples. Never thought about the acculturation of the school, and now she read Howard Zinn, and now it's opened her mind to realize that there was a plan to de-educate as they educated, not tell the truth about history, about the presidents, about the elections, all this stuff. So people are waking up. Yeah, they got to take their power back, and they've got to realize when they protest, like if you're like Mother Teresa, she never went to an anti-war protest. She only went to the peace rallies. So you got to stop in your thinking and to what you do against what you don't want. You have to flip it on its head and take a different approach. But if people were more involved and knew what was going on, but it's so convoluted,
I totally agree with what you say, but I also came to another philosophical position I just want to share in brief, that there is a time and place to say, I don't stand with this.
Right.
I actually do feel in my heart that spiritually speaking, in terms of angels, that there totally is a place in our world to be anti. There is, and I know what you're saying in terms of, but when you say like, I don't participate in what you're doing to those people because it's happening now.
Oh, that's not what I meant.
No, I know, but I'm clarifying something I came to in the earth. Is that there's power behind saying, I don't stand with them. When I watched the movie The Secret, I and a lot of people felt they left that out. I and a lot of people were a little bit hurt at how they kind of almost skewed law of attraction. I think when you say what you don't stand for, you can still attract good things. I don't think it's necessarily that literal.
No, it isn't, because you do have to stand up and not participate in the things that you don't agree with. Absolutely, you say no, we're not doing that.
And that could lead to other healing of the heart.
Yeah, we're not doing this. See, that's what we need. It's like the financial system, for instance. We know the Federal Reserve's a private bank, and we know all about how it's controlled, how the elections are controlled, and how the courts are controlled, and the pharmaceutical companies, and the food, and all this stuff. Right? So knowing all that, what do you do with that? How do you participate? Well, people, it's a very good possibility that they'll tank the dollar because China doesn't want to sell us our money back. People aren't participating in the dollar, and everybody that's informed knows that. So people say, well, gosh, wouldn't it be just a tragedy if we lost the dollar? And I go, no, it wouldn't, because people would then wake back up. I think it would create. Here's what you're talking about when you say anti and pro. It's contrast. We came to this planet because it's a planet of contrast, to learn as souls. Okay, but there is a reconciliation of yes and no. And that's awareness based on both polarities.
And so they could be in balance.
Yeah, and
I don't stand with this, but I do stand for this. We don't want this Federal Reserve System. We want this. That's why when people say in the Fed, well, we should focus on what we want to create. Because without a doubt, we could see that there are those that want to build the world order currency that's digital. And they've talked about this for decades. And to do that, they have to destroy the Fed. So if we're going to go into something, we can't say anything but the Fed, just like we couldn't say anything but Bush, because they'll just give us something else. We have to create it.
Well, yeah, and the Federal Reserve really, in the global world bank system, is bankrupt. They want to get rid of it. So we're not ending the Fed. It's ending itself. Its time's over.
It is self-destructing. You just can't print money like that.
Yeah, and what are they going to replace it with? Another form of currency? Well, like Bitcoins and Mountain Hours, and Mountain Hours is doing really well. But the Bitcoin, they're going in there and trying to control it. I know in Israel they can do like a uterine cancer, and as an outpatient, they can go in and they have the high-tech technology to heal people. I think we're going to have both, because if you look at the age we're in, Aquarian age, that is electricity, that's telephone, telegraph, internet, computers. That's high technology that's used for the greater good. But it can't exist unless you have the natural world, because we're living on a live planet. So it is a balance. Those are the two polarities that you can't have one and the other. They have to exist together. You have to have the natural world existing with really highly evolved technology, like the free energy. As soon as the the controls over that go away as soon as we evolve out of that. Then you've got the natural world, but it's extremely highly technologically beautiful. What you can do with free energy with technology, you know what I mean? So I see the perfect world being a combination, highly evolved combination of the two, where we protect the earth, but we allow people to use, we do healing with not only herbs, but we do it with light and the technology that is available that we're not able to always use. But like, we give Israel billions of dollars a year, and that's, of course, Rothschild's home base, and they're using that on their people, but look what they're doing to the Palestinians. I mean, it's just crazy. I see the second coming as already here, within the hearts and minds
Christ of consciousness.
Yeah, within the hearts and minds of humanity. Doesn't mean you can't have this religion that says that, the rapture's coming, but I feel like the rapture is here.
Do you have a suspicion as to what is going on with the top story of the planet? You tend to have a pretty good gut instinct with certain things, and there's the potential for that.
Yeah.
And there's also the potential that it's a manufactured Chinese 9/11. If it comes out the West did this.
The plane, you mean?
This is not going to be good for geopolitics and would fit into that stage war scenario, which I've talked about for years, and we're still seeing events manifest that I believe that Putin, Obama, these guys are acting. That these conflicts that they're presenting to the world aren't necessarily real conflicts.
No.
They've been created for us to watch and believe in them, so we identify with nationalism.
Yeah,
so
that's
I'm wondering.
Very true. I mean, it could be anything. I mean, I know China said that if Russia messes with the Ukraine, they're coming in behalf of the Ukraine. China's already said, we're not going to let you.
And the people respond to these statements, and what I have seen and spoken of for years is the manufactured popularity from RT and the dangers, popularity of Putin, and the dangers of taking RT at believing that it's full truth without an agenda. When it's Russian government.
It's probably a little bit of both, you never know. That's the thing with this plane. It could have landed already. Who's on that plane? That's what I keep wanting to find out. They could have disintegrated it in the air. You just don't know, but there is a hidden agenda, that's for sure, and it'll come out. Like, look at Sandy Hook. Now it's pretty much, if you do your homework, pretty much transparent to see what happened there. It took them 2.5 years to pull that off.
And I agree with Jay Weiner and others that talk about the archonic hold over mankind, which is not so much an alien invasion that's physical, but one of the mind. So let's get back to Planet A and Planet B.
Yeah, and Planet AB, which is where we're at now. This is Planet AB we're on right now. So, there will be a world war on Planet B. It won't be in my timeline, because I won't give my energy to seeing that happen. And I don't think it will happen.
Let's specifically discuss this. There is a potential of people being in a different reality from the scenario, but there still is the potential of the scenario itself.
Yeah, whether we see that or not.
Whether we see that or not, whether it'll be there or not, but is there still value in telling people you can choose free will and not be in that scenario? And that's the role that I feel that I'm here to play, to say, hey, I may want to be over here, but I still feel a role to at least speak to those and present information. You don't have to go down this route and be trapped into nationalism. Well, because I see certain people, they're gonna bait people the next decade to go to arms.
Yeah,
and I want to tell people you don't have to, because if they sit behind the same table, and they've been playing this for years, you don't have to take up arms, because this could very well be what they're going to try to get people to do.
Well, that's the thing, too.
We tell them, yeah.
And the other thing that's so extremely critical here, I think, for people to understand, is things can happen that we can't explain. Things can happen that don't make any sense at all in a good way and still be real and possible. Because when we say they're going to have a third world war, no. I don't say that they're going to have that. I don't put any juice into them doing their silly little war. People on the phone call, they say, well, what do you think? I said, I see it as petty tyrants. I diminish them into being children, because I know that you call it a miracle, but actually when you look at science and the natural world you're talking about, it's miraculous. Anything can happen to change this. That's out of our hands, out of our thinking, out of our control.
And I'm hoping the solar influence, or not hope,
there's controls that control the control. I mean, in the way I look at things, just because they tell us they're in control, why do we believe that? Why do we believe that they have all this power because it's on the television? it's in alternative media, that could be just totally, all of it could be lies. You have to think about that. That it could actually, everything we've learned to be true of the powers that be, of course you see it acted out in our world, throw people in jail without trials, they take your kids, they take your money, the IRS is going to be in charge of Obamacare. I mean, what is that? Well, they're not even based in the United States.
Some people would hear that and go, well, no, maybe there is no them, and it really is just a lie, that all these people really are crazy that believe in conspiracy theories.
And we're doing the same thing we're not wanting the mainstream to do. Is to feed into it. You just don't know. You have to keep open to the fact that we're moving into a times where the normal rules do not apply. That we will see things that we never could have expected to see happen. Miracles, really. And they're not miracles, really. They're just really the way that the natural world works. And yet we've got all of this other stuff that says this is the way it rolls down, And it might not necessarily roll down at all, even for the most enlightened people. There's always a chance that the end game isn't what
so let's take a region on the earth right now where there already is world war, where you call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. It's called Afghanistan.
It's never ended.
It's called Iraq. So when we talk about they're not going to have this, it's happening actually already.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, how, if it's happening already, is it guaranteed that they're not just going to do the next step? Because the last decade, we've seen them go step after step.
Well, they very well might.
Libya happened just a couple of years ago.
They very well might.
And so all I am saying, or representing Dede, who greatly appreciates your message, is the understanding of the parallel realities to help bring people from one reality to the other. Not to say, from my point of view, it's not going to happen.
Oh,
but
it is happening.
You don't have to participate in what they're already doing now, which is to fight, kill, destroy. I feel like, even in Portland, what reality we want to create is up to us. But I feel there's an archonic influence in Portland.
Oh, there's an archonic influence everywhere.
Right.
It doesn't matter where you are. It really doesn't. It's everywhere in the world. You've got these influences. If the top is the Vatican, the Queen of England, the Rothschilds through Israel, it's everywhere. There's no running. There's no hiding. But it's and you can be aware that it's going on. I mean, I could say that just because I can't see the war in Afghanistan means it's not real, but people have said it's real. They've suffered. There's been damage. Children are dying.
Sure.
Women are dying. So you can feel that in your heart. And I don't know. It's tricky. It's tricky being here. It's not easy to be on the planet. We can't control anybody else's behavior. We cannot control their behavior. We can't make them listen. We can't make them good. We can't make them bad. We can't judge them. We can't do anything about it. The only thing we can do something about is our immediate self and how we present ourselves to the world and how the world presents itself to us. People that look at new timelines, that's a completely foreign concept to a lot of people. And yet we have our tribes. We have our like-minded individuals. And that's the real blessing of it.